After Black Saturday, the Gazala Line still existed on the map, but its meaning had changed. The boxes had not all fallen, the minefields had not vanished, and many British and Commonwealth soldiers were still holding positions with discipline and courage. Yet the mobile battle that was supposed to make the line work had been lost. British armor had been battered so severely that it could no longer reliably strike, block, and restore balance across the battlefield. That is why the order to abandon Gazala mattered so much. It was not simply a retreat from ground. It was the admission that a defensive system can become irrelevant once the mobile force protecting it has been broken. If you would like to move beyond the podcast, you can see my available books at militaryauthor.me. And at trackpads.com, you will find magazines and galleries with hundreds of thousands of photos and videos to explore. The Gazala Line had always depended on a difficult partnership between fixed defense and armored maneuver. The boxes were meant to hold firm, the minefields were meant to slow and shape the enemy, and the armored brigades were meant to move against Rommel once his attack was checked or exposed. For a time, that concept still seemed possible. Bir Hakeim delayed the southern sweep, the cauldron looked like a trap, and British commanders believed Rommel might still be crushed. But each failed counterattack drained the mobile reserve, and Black Saturday made the damage unmistakable. The line still had parts, but the parts were no longer functioning as one system. The order to go came from the recognition that holding the line could now destroy the army. A commander may want to keep a fortified position for reasons of pride, strategy, or political pressure, but the battlefield imposes its own logic. If the enemy controls the movement around the position, if friendly armor cannot restore the situation, and if supply and withdrawal routes are threatened, staying can become more dangerous than leaving. At Gazala, the British had to choose between ground and the preservation of fighting power. That choice was painful because the line had been built with serious effort, but serious effort does not make a position worth holding after its operational purpose has failed. General Neil Ritchie faced a problem no commander wants. He had to order withdrawal from a line that many troops had expected to defend, while preventing that withdrawal from becoming a rout. Pulling an army out of contact is one of the hardest operations in war, especially when the enemy has regained the initiative. Units must be told when to move, which routes to take, what to destroy, what to carry, and how to avoid blocking one another. Rear guards must cover the movement, supply vehicles must be protected, and commanders must keep enough order that the retreat does not become a race for survival. In the desert, distance made every one of those tasks harder. For the men in the boxes, the order could feel different depending on where they were and what they had experienced. Some positions had fought under pressure for days and knew the wider battle was going badly. Others might have felt that their own sector was still intact and that withdrawal meant leaving a defensible place because of events they could barely see. This is one of the cruel features of a defensive system spread across a wide desert front. A unit can be locally successful and still be ordered back because the larger battle has turned elsewhere. The soldier in a trench experiences ground as immediate and personal, while the commander must judge whether that ground still protects the army. The withdrawal was complicated by the fact that the British could not simply march east in a neat line. The battlefield had been twisted by weeks of fighting, with Axis forces in positions that threatened normal routes, and with minefields, wrecks, dust, and confusion shaping every movement. Some units had to disengage under pressure, while others had to find routes that avoided the most dangerous Axis concentrations. Vehicles needed fuel, wounded men needed evacuation, guns had to be moved or destroyed, and supplies that could not be carried had to be denied to the enemy if possible. A retreat in armored warfare is not the absence of battle. It is battle conducted while trying to preserve motion. Rommel's forces pressed the advantage because they understood what British withdrawal meant. The Gazala Line had been the shield west of Tobruk, and once that shield began to pull back, the whole campaign moved into a new phase. The Axis did not have unlimited strength, and Rommel still depended on fuel, repair, ammunition, and command control. But he now possessed something more valuable than perfect abundance: the initiative. He could threaten, pursue, and force British commanders to react. In mobile warfare, a retreating army often has to solve practical problems, while the pursuing army chooses where to create the next crisis. The order to abandon Gazala also raised the question of Tobruk almost immediately. The port had already become one of the great symbols of the Desert War, famous for its earlier endurance under siege. Yet the situation in 1942 was not the same as before. Tobruk's security depended on the field army around it, and that field army had just lost the Gazala battle. Once the line was abandoned, Tobruk risked being left as a fortress behind a retreating front, rather than as a secure base protected by mobile forces to the west. That distinction would soon prove decisive. A fortress can be strong in itself and still become a trap if the operational setting around it collapses. This moment also shows why fortified systems can fail suddenly after appearing strong for a long time. For weeks, Gazala had contained minefields, boxes, artillery, infantry, and anti-tank guns. It had delayed Rommel, complicated his supply routes, and created real opportunities for the British to strike back. But a defensive system is not measured only by how much concrete, wire, or minefield it contains. It is measured by whether it can continue to shape the enemy's movement and protect friendly freedom of action. Once Rommel could move, pressure, and force withdrawal despite the boxes, the line's physical strength no longer equaled operational strength. The British retreat should not be read as a simple failure of courage. Many of the men ordered to leave had fought hard, and some had held positions far longer than the wider battle could support. The problem lay in the connection between local resistance and campaign control. Bir Hakeim had held, Knightsbridge had been contested, and British tank crews had fought repeatedly against Rommel's armor and anti-tank guns. Yet the whole system failed to produce a decisive result when the opportunity existed. By the time the order to go came, the bravery of individual units could not reverse the fact that the Eighth Army's mobile shield had been badly weakened. For armored warfare, this is a crucial lesson. Tanks are often imagined as instruments of advance, but they are equally important to defense because they give a commander the ability to respond. Without mobile reserves, a defensive line becomes a set of fixed points waiting to be isolated, bypassed, or reduced. The Gazala Line had been built around the idea that infantry boxes and minefields could hold the enemy long enough for armor to strike. When that armor was worn down, the boxes could still resist, but they could no longer control the larger battle. The order to go was the logical consequence of that loss. The withdrawal also reminds us that preserving an army can be more important than preserving a position. That statement sounds simple, but in war, it is often politically and emotionally difficult. Ground carries meaning, and places like Tobruk carried enormous symbolic weight. Yet an army that stays too long in a failing position may lose not only the ground, but the force needed to fight the next battle. The British had to look east, toward Egypt, and the defensive possibilities that still remained beyond Libya. The retreat from Gazala was therefore not only an ending, it was also the beginning of the next desperate phase of the North African campaign.
The order to go marked the death of the Gazala Line as a working military system. It showed how fast a carefully prepared defense could become obsolete once the mobile battle around it was lost. Rommel had not captured every box before the line failed, and he did not need to. He had broken the relationship between fixed defense and armored response, and that was enough. From this point, the campaign's weight shifted toward Tobruk, retreat, and the road to Egypt. Gazala had begun as a British attempt to stop Rommel with mines, boxes, armor, and coordination. It ended with the grim recognition that positions do not hold armies together when initiative, mobility, and operational control have passed to the enemy.
You've been listening to Famous Tank Battles. These battles were never just about machines. They were about doctrine, terrain, firepower, logistics, and the hard problem of turning shock into victory. For more military history writing and books, visit militaryauthor.me. And for magazines, podcasts, and a massive archive of military photos and video, visit trackpads.com. Thanks for listening.